Finally, for lecture number 3, we're going to kind of combine the lab write-up with an outline write-up as well. The first part of this is more the write-up on basic ideas. The second one is more what your assignment is going to be for our write-up number 4 here in terms of writing up the experiment. So let me explain a few things to you based on your discussion board comments. In this situation, what we were basically dealing with, this was an experiment. And if you look at, I think it's chapter 1 of your book, it wasn't a survey. I didn't ask a lot of people what their thoughts were. It was not a case report where I asked 1 or 2 people what their ideas were. It was not naturalistic observation. This was an experiment. I manipulated a variable. So go into why it wasn't the other 3 using your book. I manipulated a variable. The variable here was the type of wording, a general category name. There were 2 levels, organized versus random. If you're having trouble with levels versus IVs, think about males and females. If I ran a study on males and females, the independent variable, although it wouldn't be manipulated, it would be called a quasi, Q-U-A-S-I. Independent variable would be gender, because you can't really manipulate gender so much. And the 2 levels would be males and females. Then we have hypothesis. The hypothesis was people should memorize more information when it was organized than when it was random. When you run a good experiment, things should be standardized. If you notice, both word lists, they had the same font, they had the same structure, they had the same number of words, they each had 10 seconds to look at. So when you run a good experiment, everything should be the same except what you manipulate. So that's what we did here, and that was an experiment. I asked you another question about statistical significance. And yes, the hypothesis was that people should have done better in the organized. Statistical significance, let me explain this. Statistical significance, the main question is, did something happen due to chance, or did something happen due to a manipulated variable? Or another variable, I should say. And so the idea there is, let's say that I told you in Stanton, we had one day last summer that was 100 degrees. And if I asked you, do you think that happened due to climate change, or do you think that happened due to random chance, what would you probably say? You'd probably answer, that happened due to chance. Because 20% of the time, maybe 1 out of every 5 years, we get a 100-degree day. So if you did get a 100-degree day, one of them, you'd say that probably happened due to chance, and that was not significant. But let's take situation B. Let's say that last summer in Stanton, there were 30 straight days of 100 degrees. What you would have to do, and this is very important to write down, is you would have to assess what is the probability that this could happen due to chance. 30 straight days. Could this happen just due to chance? And you'd probably figure out, if you had a computer or something, that the probability of this occurring due to chance might be 1 in 1,000 years. So 1 out of every 1,000 years. And so if it's 1 out of every 1,000 years, you'd say, you know what? That probability due to chance is so low, it's less than 5 out of 100. I'm going to decide that that is not due to chance. It's kind of a weird sense of logic. But if it happens 1 time out of 1,000, that's less than 5 times out of 100. You'd say, you know, the probability of that occurring due to chance is very low. I'm going to decide that's due to something else. And so you'd come to the conclusion that that result was due to another variable. You could say climate change, not being political here or anything, just giving you an example. So that result would be considered statistically significant. Is it due to chance, or is there another variable at play here? So if you want to write out the notes on this, that would be good. In the example for your class, you had a situation where you had random versus organized, and we were hypothesizing that people should remember more information when it was organized. So what you would do on this is you would do something called a paired sample t-test. So I need you to actually go to the link I have there on GraphPad and see if you can actually do what I did with this, and then you're going to actually run this with your own individual data. Put the data in at that link. It's a paired t-test, and with my data here, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 9. So subject 1 was a 1, and then organized 5, 2 and 7, 3 and 9. Does it look like it worked? Well, you'd probably say yes there, because In this situation, it looks like the average increase was about 5 points. So what we do is the numerator for the t-test is a 5. It's the mean difference. The standard error of the difference. If you hit the compute key, you'll see the standard error of the difference. You don't need to know much about that. It's 0.577. And then what you do to get your t-score there is you just put the 5 over the 0.577. They do that for you. So the t-value is 8.66. So you would write this out with the APA statement, t of 2, because you had 3 people, those are called degrees of freedom, equals 8.66, p equals 0.0131. If the value is less than 0.5, you write out the exact value like that. If the result is greater than 0.5, you write p is greater than 0.5. In this case, because the value is less than 0.5, it is statistically significant. So see if you can do that. If the value was greater than 0.5, you'd say the result is not significant. Organized was no better than random. So what I would like you to do as your last thing, and this will be worth 50 points, is I would actually like you to take the file I sent you, the Excel file, and type in those numbers, put them in, and then write up a little section of that. Write up basically a little paragraph. How many participants were in this? What were the materials, the organized versus the random list? How many words were in each? The procedure, it was actually run in a counterbalanced order. Half of you had the organized first, half of you had the random word list first. That would prevent kind of a carryover effect, because if I gave you all the organized ones first, then you'd do poorly on the second one, but you wouldn't know if it was because that was second or if random was worse. So I counterbalance thing and then share the statistical and real world conclusion. The statistical is the t-test and say if it was significant. Real world conclusion in this case with the above example is people were better at memorizing the organized situation. So hopefully this makes sense to you. You have 2 weeks to work on each one of these things. Send me drafts as you work on them. You might want to work on the statistical thing first. The outlines for the lectures are maybe a little simpler, but I hope this makes sense for you. Thanks. Bye-bye.